Hi everyone, welcome back to Middle School Book Talk. My name is Miss Sarah, and like usual, I have a few new middle school reads I'm going to talk about. This month I chose to talk about 3 books in the same genre. They're all biographies and they're illustrated, so a lot of the illustrations add a lot to the story. So we've got one on Julia Child, Dolly Parton, and Toni Morrison. The first one about Julia Child is called Born Hungry, Julia Child Becomes the French Chef. That's by Alex Prodham and illustrated by Sarah Green. Alex Prodham is actually Julia Child's great-nephew. Throughout the book, it talks about Julia and how she grew up not really knowing how to cook, but learned later in life. It talks about not only how she learned to cook, but also her other jobs before she became the French chef as we know her. She actually worked in World War II, and she developed a shark repellent. Throughout the book, there's a bunch of cool illustrations, and they kind of show how she learned to cook, from basic meals to her gourmet French meals that she's known for, and how she even became a TV personality. On the pages, there's their story and cool illustrations, like I said, and then also has a quote from her on each page. And in the back, there's more information about her and a recipe that you and an adult can make together for scrambled eggs. The next book is about Dolly Parton, and it's called Dazzlin Dolly. It's by Suzanne Slade and illustrated by Edwin Fotheringham. This book goes through Dolly Parton's life from her early childhood up until now. It talks about how she grew up in poverty, being one of 12 siblings. But even though they didn't have a lot of money, they had a lot of love, and Dolly still had a lot of fun. She was always interested in performing in music from an early age, and she even tried to make her own guitar. She tried to make it out of an old piano string and some wood. When she was a teenager, she actually got a chance to perform live, and she did have some stage fright, but worked through it. And the crowd even gave her a standing ovation. She finally got a record deal and became one of the most famous country singers in the world. Just like the Julia Child book, it has more about Dolly in the back. It talks about her talent, but it also talks about her charity work and how she gave back to her community, including founding Imagination Library, which provides books to children. Last book I'm going to talk about is called On Her Wings, The Story of Toni Morrison, written by Jardine Nolan and illustrated by James Ransom. The illustrations in this book are probably my favorites out of the 3 books. They even kind of made a checkered pattern out of stuff from her childhood. This talks about Toni Morrison's childhood and how she grew up. It emphasizes how before she could read or write, she listened to her parents' and her grandparents' stories, which included stories from the Bible, stories about myths and legends, and ghost stories. When Toni was in 1st grade, she could read and write really well in her class, and she would help those who couldn't. As a teenager, she worked at the public library, and her job was to put books away, but she always found herself getting into the stories instead of putting them away. And that introduced her more to books, and she would always come back to read different types of books such as poetry, history, and legends. When she grew up and became an author, she often wrote about difficult things, but she thought they were important to talk about. When Toni Morrison became an author, she would write about the African-American struggle, and she would put Black families and mothers at the front of her stories, which was usually not a big part of books. This is one of my favorite parts of the book, where the page opens to represent a lot of her stories and the people she knew in real life. In the back of the book, the author writes a note about how she learned about Toni Morrison and became infatuated with her work. And it also has a list of Toni Morrison's novels for adults and also her books for children. All 3 of these books are available in the new kids section of the library. What I like about these books is that they're pretty universal. Even though they're biographies, younger kids can enjoy them. And even though they're picture books, older kids and even adults can enjoy them as well. I know when I was younger, I really liked fiction books. I thought history books and biographies and stuff like that were boring. But finding books like these actually inspire me to look more into these people. And I hope they do the same for you. For December, we are pretty much done with our normal programs until after the holidays, but we still have the scavenger hunts, Reference the Elf is here, a lot of different things you can still come and do. If I don't see you on video or in person before the end of the month, I hope everyone has a great holiday and gets to relax with family and friends, and I will see you for sure in the new year. Bye!